Hello, this is Michael Novenson with Information Security Media Group. We're going to be discussing turning the tables on threat actors, how to detect and delay attacks using cloud decoys. We'll be hearing from Stav Sitnikov, the Chief Product Officer at Stream.Security, as well as Tushar Kothari, a CEO and board member at Attivo Networks, which is part of SentinelOne. Traditional cybersecurity focuses on reducing mean time to response, but what if the goal was to slow attackers down and limit their impact? Today's webinar will discuss how to use cloud decoys, which are also known as canaries, to proactively mitigate threats in cloud environments. We'll be diving into how cloud decoys disrupt attackers and enhance detection, why decoys are crucial in cloud security today, plus you'll gain practical insights for integrating decoys into your security strategy. A little bit of background about us. Information Security Media Group is 18 years old, heading on 19. We started back in 2006 as a single site focused on covering the banking and the financial services industry. Over the past nearly 2 decades, we've grown to encompass 37 media sites, taking on everything from healthcare to government cybersecurity, as well as specific topics like data breaches and info risk, and most recently expanding to discuss artificial intelligence, OT, and the Chief Information Officer community. In addition to all of our media coverage, we do events around the world, summits, as well as roundtables, along with hosting webinars like the one you're listening to today. If you have any questions during the webinar or you need any technical support, please reach out to webinars@ismg.io. Today's webinar is being hosted by Stream.Security, who delivers the only cloud detection and response solution that SecOps teams can trust. Born in the cloud, Stream's Cloud Twin solution enables real-time cloud threat and exposure modeling to accelerate response in today's highly dynamic cloud enterprise environments. By using the Stream Security platform, SecOps teams gain unparalleled visibility and can pinpoint exposures and threats by understanding the past, present, and future of their cloud infrastructure. The AI-assisted platform helps to determine attack paths and blast radius across all elements of the cloud infrastructure to eliminate gaps, accelerate mean time to response by streamlining investigations, reducing knowledge gaps, and maximizing team productivity and limiting burnout. We'll be hearing today from Stav Sitnikov. He is the Chief Product Officer at Stream.Security and oversees the product development of Stream's cloud detection and response platform. With more than 15 years of experience, including roles at Mellanox Technologies and in the IDF's Cyber Defense Directorate, Stav has driven growth, technical excellence, and innovation across networking, security, and cloud ecosystems. We'll also be hearing from Tushar Kothari, CEO and board member at Attivo Networks. He's a veteran of the high-tech industry with more than 25 years of experience in building market-leading companies. Tushar was CEO of Attivo Networks from 2013 to March 2022, when the company was acquired by SentinelOne for $616 million. Attivo Networks was a pioneer in identity threat detection and response and deception technology. With Attivo, Fortune 500 and other security-conscious organizations were empowered to detect threats in real time before damages from a data breach occur. Prior to Attivo Networks, Tushar worked at senior leadership positions at companies like NCR, Juniper Networks, and Cisco Systems. Tushar attended Rutgers University, New Brunswick, where he achieved his master's in computer science. If you have any questions during today's webinar, please reach out to webinars@ismg.io. And with that all out of the way, let's get things started. Let's start by discussing cloud decoys. Stav, let's start with the basics here. What are cloud decoys?
So cloud decoys are similar to what we have been using for the past, decade in on-prem environments. Similar in the cloud. Cloud decoys are assets that we, as potential security teams, set into our environments to try and make a potential threat actor touch on them, think that they are a real asset in our environment, potentially allow us as a security team to detect that the threat actor is touching them because we don't expect our application or other users in the system to touch them. And then at the second phase, to potentially slow down the threat actor by taking him out of our environment into a sandbox as an example. Tushar, do you have anything else to add on that based on your experience?
Yeah, sure. So I think basically decoys is, whether it's cloud, on-prem, or any other environment, you're essentially planting some deceptive assets, or the assets, like Stav said, we are planting. And the goal is to, uh, you know, uh, make them look as authentic as possible, as real as possible. And there are various techniques. And in my company, Attivo Networks, we had become very good at projecting at scale, decoys throughout the network. And the idea was to, so by definition, the method that attackers use to look for uh, assets is different than what a regular employee or somebody who already has access, because he knows, like, if you come into your house, you know which side the bedroom is. But if a bad guy comes in, he needs to look whether it's left, right, or center, right? So if you put an extra door on the right side, for example, he might open that to see if their bedroom is there. That would be a dead giveaway that he doesn't belong there. So similarly, in the network, you would basically plant this deceptive assets, whether they're VMs, there are S3 buckets, Lambda functions, all kinds of things, and you can make them look very authentic. And then if the attacker touches them, that's great. Then you know that doesn't belong there. Does that make sense, Seth?
Yes.
Absolutely. And Tushar, sticking with you here, why are cloud decoys crucial for an in-depth defense strategy?
So, attackers know all the standard applications and different tools you have and all the things, and they can practice on them. These days, they are well funded. So, they could get all the commercially available products and figure out how to get around them and not get detected. And also, what happens is the attackers can try hundreds of times until they find a path that works for them. While when you have decoys or deception, uh, it's very hard for attacker to now he has to not only find a way to get around your standard defenses, but he has to figure out what is real, what is not, and avoid touching them. And for him now, he has to one mistake and he's caught. So before, it used to be he could try 100 times and see which one works. Now the table is turned on him, and the mistake he makes one mistake, he's going to get caught.
Got you. And I want to get a sense as well in terms of how do decoys focus on slowing down attackers and limiting their impact?
So first of all, Star, I don't know if you want me to word. Yeah. So let me answer that. First of all, the attackers, when they engage with a decoy, um, now they are, depending on how you design your receptive network and all that, we would basically quarantine that endpoint or that particular decoy, so that attacker can never go anywhere else. So we quarantined him. That means he can't get to the real assets that he needs to get to, which is number one way to slow him down. Second is to obviously redirect him into a deceptive sandbox or somewhere else where you want to feed him false information and keep him entertained. But the best use is to quarantine and cancel him right there.
I would add on top of that a bit that what we have seen in large scale enterprises and smaller companies is that many times teams in production, specifically in production environments, do not enable auto quarantine on any asset, right? So at least from our perspective and how we see the market right now, at least at Stream, is that many times teams want confidence to actually go and auto respond, right? Now, canaries, I provide a high fidelity signal of confidence. Now, at least if the teams do not auto respond, as Tushar mentioned, like auto quarantine immediately, when you send them to those type of sandboxes, as Tushar said, you give the response team, like the SOC, the SecOps team, the enough time to have the ability for somebody to get that alert, triage it, say, hey, okay, it's a canary. There is another maybe IOC indicator that's actually a threat actor, and then they go and respond to that while potentially the threat actor is still in that sandbox and not continuing to do damage inside your environment. So I think that both of those are highly critical elements of decoys in an environment, of course, including the rest of the elements that you have as part of your infrastructure. And then, those decoys are single signal out of a bunch of other signals that you have in a defense of in-depth strategy, where you might have the endpoint detection, the EDR, cloud logs detection, etc. So it's another signal, but it's a very strong signal with a high fidelity for an actual response against other like fingerprinting or static rules detections of threats.
I think Stas, you said it correctly. So the thing about the quality of signal is obviously very high. There are almost no false positives. So that makes this technique a very valuable technique, as you said, along with complementing your other defenses. So that's one. And second, the beauty of this technique is that the attacker finds you versus you finding the attacker. So that is inherently very, very efficient because attacker found your decoy. So, basically, if it's like analogy I used to use is that if you want to catch a mouse in your house, the best thing is to put a mouse trap and some breadcrumbs and some peanut butter, and you would catch the mouse because now mouse is going to find the trap. But if you were to otherwise look for the mouse in your house, possibly using a rifle and a lot of ammunition, it's a long journey and a lot of damage and very difficult. So that's the beauty of this technique. And I think for an attacker, it is a game changer because he doesn't know now what's real, what's not. One mistake, he's stripped. And there are levels of sophistication in the deception technology. I mentioned things like where automatically use quarantine and eject the attacker, but there are other methods, or you could take him to sandbox, buy yourself time, all that kind of stuff. But for attacker, this is very, very difficult to now not only find a way to break through your defenses, but once you're inside, absolutely not make any mistake. It's like you break into a museum and there are laser, sensors. So you cross one and you trigger the alarm.
Yeah, that's a great analogy.
And Tushar, sticking with you here, I want to get a sense of what shift do decoys have in terms of mitigating cyber attacks in the cloud? And then how does that impact security strategy?
So I think cloud makes it even easier to project decoys. And basically the keyword is project because you're not putting actual resources, you're putting information about a resource that is sufficient for attacker to think there is a resource. So it's very, very efficient. And you can project number of decoys. In my company, we used to inject hundreds of false, or fake assets in the network. So likewise, you could do very large scale assets in the cloud. And because in the cloud, like I said, it's very scalable, it's very easy to do that. And again, very, very difficult for attacker to figure it out and not make one mistake.
I highly agree with that. And I think that one of the things that the advantage of using decoys in the cloud is the fact that cloud by design is highly automated, meaning that unlike what we had in on-prem where you had to open a ticket to some team to go and do those deployments, and maybe they wouldn't want it to be fully automated, in the cloud, teams are used to have automations in place. So the ability for a team to actually communicate with their DevOps team and say, hey, we want something that is automatically doing that, and then combining that with other strategies that you already have in the cloud, maybe with other understanding of the cloud, etc., which we can discuss a bit later, it allows you to do it faster. As Tushar said, the cloud enables you to actually create resources without basically cost. So like creating a user in Active Directory or an IAM user in AWS costs you nothing, right? So you basically have assets that you add no cost to while you are improving your security measures to detect and potentially slow down threats, right? So basically the cost for a customer to execute that on his CapEx in the cloud is actually zero, which is beautiful.
Yeah, in Stav, that's very correct. And also, like I said, the attacker finds you versus you look for attackers. So most methods require a lot of processing power. If you're going to do anomaly detection or behavior analytics, you're processing huge amount of data. In this technique, there is no data processing required, and therefore, again, it's very, very cost effective.
Definitely. Highly agree. It's good for the vendor side as well on the margins.
Yeah.
So Stav, sticking with you here, I'd love to get a sense that I'm going to give you two questions here. First, how do cloud decoys enhance detection? And then second, what are some practical use cases for setting up and managing decoys in cloud environments?
So that's a great question. I think that there are multiple steps that should be taken into consideration when using decoys, right? At the end, at cloud scale environments, you have two methods. Whether you just select, like, I know that in my cloud environment, we have those type of resources. So those are the exact type of assets that I would want to deploy so that a threat actor going into my environment, if I have no Active Directory users because I use Okta and then I put one decoy in the Active Directory, a threat actor won't bite at that, right? So you need your decoys to look be the same assets that you have in the environment. The second would be, how do you decide whether you put those assets everywhere or strategically in places? For example, in Stream, the way that we try to tackle that issue is to suggest to the customer decoys that are based on the existing inventory that he has, like the asset that he actually used. Secondly, to make sure that those assets are placed strategically against the potential breach vectors, that external breach vectors. I'll give you an example. Let's say I have a machine, an EC2 instance, maybe running Kubernetes or whatever it is, where we know it has a critical vulnerability and it is exposed to the outside world, which potentially can be breached, like let's say an RCE. That machine has high privilege policies because my security team didn't have enough time to harden it. So there is an active potential attack breach into my environment. I know that that machine has access to all of my S3 buckets, right? That's an easy case. What would we want to suggest? Hey, you should have a decoy of an S3 type and make sure that this machine actually has access to it so that if a threat actor breaches that machine, the potential for him to touch the decoy is very high and likely. So you would want to make sure that in the breach points, the potential of actually touching those decoys is 100% certain. On top of that, once you decide on how you are going to do that, your strategy, you need to decide how you're going to manage that. Many organizations today, which are cloud native, will use infrastructure as code, right? So DevOps dictates there are no manual configurational changes. Everything goes through IAC, like Terraform, CloudFormation, ARM, depending on whatever they use. So you would need to create those decoys as part of your CI/CD process, meaning that you will have to templatize those things, push it to IAC, have your DevOps editing it, or go into a full mode automated strategy with a vendor who does it, like Stream or any other vendor, which will basically automate the entire lifecycle for you. So Stream will add, replace decoys based on your real-time asset inventory, real-time potential breachability assets, and all of that will be done automatically. I guess maybe Tushar, you can add more information on what you have seen in the market, on what are the strategies to deploy that and manage canaries, decoys.
I think there are many different things to consider. Obviously, the more sophisticated capability you have, there are different aspects to it. So, for example, you can, of course, generate, fake S3 buckets and things like that. You can insert that. Few years ago, there was a famous breach at Capital One where the attacker got in and enumerated the S3 buckets. And right there, we would have caught him because we had, if he had injected the fake S3 buckets and things like that, Lambda function, etc. The other thing to do is, in our case, we were quite advanced, and what we did was, after each attack, we kind of reshuffle everything. So even if an attacker sends a kind of what do you call somebody to do the survey what's in the network before launching an attack.
So like an recon or discovery phase and stuff like that.
Yeah. So we can mix it up. shuffle it so that it's same thing won't appear at the same place next time.
That's the strategy.
Which made it very difficult for attacker to fingerprint what's deception. Keep in mind now and as you do this deception techniques in conjunction with all the other things you do, you increase the attacker's cost dramatically because the amount of work he has to do to overcome a layer of deception is just exponentially more than what he had to do to bypass standard defense capabilities.
Tushar, I have a question for you.
Sure.
What do you think will happen? Like, let's say we as a vendor right now are using LLMs to actually build those decoys. So for example, like we want the LLM to understand like naming convention, types, configurations, data files that you would put in that S3 bucket to look similar. Now, threat actors are, doing the same thing. They are going to use AI to do the discovery and recon phases to decide on what they are going to touch. So like, how do you see that battle going on? Like, how do you look at it?
It's going to be intense battle, and I think we're going to have to get better than them. We're going to essentially we'll have to fool their LLMs, which is going to be a whole new exciting game and capabilities.
Yeah, I highly agree. For me, it's very interesting to see what will happen at the end, and I think like the decisions actually with decoys, as you mentioned before, the defending side of the house has a huge advantage over the threat actor because he needs to do one mistake. Where till now, like if you do not use decoys, it is the opposite way around. If your team does one mistake, you are breached, right? So you are basically shifting
turning the table.
game. Yeah, definitely shifting the game on. And one of the things that we have been developing and are going to release as part of our announcement is the fact that you can actually continue adding decoys as an attack moves laterally. So for example, a threat actor moves through a decoy, maybe it touches it, but you have no auto quarantine. Let's say that the security team decided they don't want auto quarantine, DevOps do not allow them, the push and pull in between IT and security, it's always there. Like continuing feeding the threat actor, additional decoys as long as they go to potentially continue slowing them down. Now, such technique will enables your team to actually continuing doing that automatically in phases, while potentially the threat actor understanding that something is going on. Like in those thrill cases, and I'm sure that you have, like during your years at Attivo, you have seen probably hundreds or thousands of ongoing attack. How did you see that balance and what actually happens? Like if you can give us some stories of like real things that you guys have seen in environments, if you have some examples like that.
So I think we toyed with that in our days, and so the thing is that the cost of putting decoys ahead of time was negligible. So we came to the conclusion that when you create decoys dynamically while the attack is going on, hope is that you would save some cost, because otherwise you'll have to put 100 decoys versus you put 5 and then put another 5 and put another 5. Because in the deception world, the cost is negligible, as you and I discussed. It kind of doesn't, you might as well put 100 decoys.
That's a great answer. So you say that strategically, it's better for a potential customer to basically set potential decoys across the potential lateral movement, right? Out of the box. Okay.
Correct. Because,
that's a great
otherwise
input.
otherwise you'll get very sophisticated in doing those things. The amount of engineering and overhead required to create the technology to dynamically insert decoys as the attack is progressing is quite heavy. And again, you could make a mistake in those environments. So in my days, we concluded that we might as well inject them ahead of time and be done with it.
How did you guys tackle the fact that there are places where a potential breach can happen while they do not have, like they have, the blast radius is very fixed. So for example, let's say I have an Active Directory user that have access to specific asset via policies, no over permissive policies, but that asset has PII. How would you decoy like if somebody breached that, how would you add a decoy to that? Like, how did you guys look at such cases?
So in case of Active Directory, so we kind of went a little bit, um, further shift left kind of thing, where first thing when attacker makes a query to Active Directory, that was a trigger point for us. So we had figured out how to identify a malicious query versus a regular query from an endpoint, for example, where attacker has gotten in. And so what we did was when attacker made a query, we determined it's a malicious query. And what we did was we intercepted the response that came from the attacker and replaced it with the deceptive response.
Okay.
So
So you were sitting as a middleware in between the
yeah,
Active Directory
right.
gateway?
Yeah. So when the Active Directory gave a response on the endpoint itself, we didn't touch the Active Directory. So when the response come to the endpoint, we would intercept it and replace it.
Oh, that's a very cool technique. Thank you
Yeah, so
for adding
that
that.
worked very well, and it is quite easy to determine a malicious query because there are known applications and things that usually, do a query to Active Directory. So we could do that, and
So
in our
in
case,
Active
yeah,
Directory, go ahead.
go ahead.
So I say in Active Directory, that's definitely a great strategy, like to intercept that on the endpoint. In the cloud, it's a bit harder if you go into the application potential attack vectors because you can't really intercept those. But
Right.
yeah, if you're using that type of strategy from the endpoint, and you guys are looking for, like anyone who listens to us right now is looking into such a thing, that's definitely an amazing approach.
And there are many different ways to do things depending on the situation. Active Directory is one example, but then, like you said, some applications you may not have those kind of things. Then different ways to get about, making similar, deceptive environment to trip the bad guys.
Yeah.
So Stav, I'd love to include with you here and get a sense from you of how is Stream.Security helping customers get the most out of cloud decoys and cyber defense?
So Stream at its base is a cloud detection response company, right? So we try to make sure that if something happens, you will know about it. And then we will provide you the best capability to triage, investigate, understand everything that happened and respond against that. Now, part of that might be fully automated, but as I mentioned, what we have seen, at least in enterprise and production environments, most of them won't do auto quarantine. They will actually do the triage, investigate, and then manually or with assisted, like AI assisted things will do that. Now, we heavily believe that decoys and the things that Tushar and his team has built over the years as an industry are highly effective assets to make sure that, first of all, you detect in a high fidelity signal, as we talked about before. So for us, a decoy is additional signal, which has a very strong fidelity, and you can basically build toxic combination on top of the log behaviors, the decoy signals, to actually give that confidence to auto-respond. And then we want to help the customer to slow that threat actor down, right? So Stream provides out-of-the-box sandboxes, which mimic in some way the customer's environment, meaning that, for example, let's have we have customer X, that customer is using S3 bucket, DynamoDBs, and the Kubernetes cluster. When the threat actor touches the decoy, and then let's say he bites it and goes to the sandbox environment, he will see an environment with a similar naming convention, he will see an environment with similar asset, so he will be sure that he is in an actual environment. Now that environment will be called, let's say an example, data backups, I don't know, centralized backup data. So you want the threat actor to feel that he's really there. Now, doing that manually as a team, anyone can do. Like you can go and decide like, we do not want to use a vendor, we will build it ourselves, and it's truly possible, right? Where Stream comes in is that we fully automate that. We update it based on the way that your environment updates. We automatically suggest or insert, depending on the way that you want us to use those canaries. We make sure that those canaries are up to date with cloud assets. Cloud assets, as we all know, the difference between on-prem and cloud is that the types of assets change dramatically. Why? Like 3 months ago, I remember how long it was, like half a year ago, AWS announced AWS Bedrock. Right now, you have like a self-managed, a self-served AI LLM infrastructure. My developer goes in, we want to use it in production. They make it up. Can I use a decoy for that? Yes, I can. But if you are not using a vendor, you will need to do that manually. Stream will automatically instrument that for you. And I think that as part of what we do, the ability for us to actually suggest the placements if you don't want the overhead of actually deploying it everywhere, because there is a push and pull at the end between the IT guys, the DevOps guys, and the security guys on the overhead that those things might create, right? It really depends on the organization, size, let's call it the push and pull structure of what is more critical, going fast forward or securing your environment. I think that using a vendor such as Stream will help you do that. And that's what we aim to do as part of that initiative.
Interesting stuff. Stav, Tushar, thank you so much both for the time here.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
You're welcome. And for folks who are watching, if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to reach out to webinars@ismg.io. Once again, we've been speaking with Tushar Kothari. He is the CEO and a board member at Attivo Networks, as well as Stav Sitnikov, a chief product officer at Stream.Security. For Information Security Media Group, this is Michael Novenson.